Random House presents The Apple and the Tree, Life as Dr. Mahathir's Daughter, written by Marina Mahathir, read by Ellie Flory Fawcett. To my parents, under whose nurturing embrace I blossomed, to Tara, for being my steadfast tree, and to Ineza, Haga, and Shasha, my apples. Prologue. Whenever I have reason to tell off my younger daughter Shasha for being too mouthy or sloppy, she always comes back to me with the words apple and tree. It is a code for that adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Everything she is comes from me. Everything, in short, is my fault. I may be the apple to my father's tree, but I like to think of our life journeys as two trains running on railroad tracks so close to each other that passing carriages scrape against each other. Of course, Dad's track is 32 years longer than mine. He picked up his chief engineer and steward, Mom, in 1956, and then 4 more passengers with her in the next 8 years. Later, another 3 were added. As we grew up, we got on our trains, all going independently of each other, only meeting at the rail yard when something happens. Undoubtedly, the trajectory of his journey has been far higher and more distinguished than mine. But we have run alongside each other. His Orient Express to my Keretapi Tanah Melayu, sometimes reaching a junction and stopping to allow the other, usually his more magnificent one, to pass. Our trains ultimately are from the same company and are heading towards the same destination, even though sometimes our paths diverge in big and small ways. There are many mountain-crossing bridges and tunnels along the way. The scenery can be breathtaking and sometimes dark and foreboding. But we chug along in tandem, tooting to different songs until we come to the station at the end, although neither of us knows when we will get there. Much like the Angsana tree in the Alor Setar garden of my childhood, my father looms large in my life. So much of what I am today, from my laser beam focus on causes I support, to the discipline that even surprises me, to my impatience at those who are too slow to understand what I'm saying, even my occasional sarcastic snipe. I know they all came from him. Despite all that, I was, and perhaps still am, the little sapling trying to grow out of his umbrella-like shadow, watching, observing, and sometimes pushing back so that I may breathe and branch out on my own. This is the story of the journey that I have taken in my life as my father's daughter. Although much of it will feature him, it's not his story. While he was crafting his, and that of millions of Malaysians, I was trying to write my own with ink-stained fingers on whatever paper was handed over to me. I would be the first to say that being the apple from Dad's giant tree is a life of privilege, at least when viewed from the outside. But branching out from under those leafy branches has its costs. This is my story, viewed from behind, alongside, and sometimes opposite that of Dad's. I am striving to tell it without blowing anybody's horn, but with sincerity and honesty, with my truths and nobody else's. Enjoy the ride. Part 1. The Beginning, 1957 to 1979. 1. My Beginnings. To understand my story, we have to go back to the beginning. I was born in Alor Setar, in the northern state of Kedah, over 400 kilometers from Kuala Lumpur, in June 1957, just a few months before Merdeka. My parents had married the year before, long after they had first met at medical school in Singapore after World War II. Dad, the dashing young man from the north of the peninsula, had been a star student and graduated earlier than Mom, a quiet woman from a strict Kuala Lumpur family who struggled with her books. Their romance is the stuff of legend in our family. How she had many suitors, but only he used the excuse of offering tuition in her worst subjects to get close to her. Mom has never been shy about recounting how, over a game of Scrabble, Dad expressed his feelings for her by spelling out with the tiles, "I love you." Although both their families knew of their relationship, there was no question of marrying before graduation. Mom had been brought up by a father, my grandpa, Haji Muhammad Ali, who believed very much in girls' education and had refused to allow the couple to marry until his daughter finished university. Mom was diligent, but struggled to pass her exams, and it took another 2 years after Dad had graduated and done his housemanship before she earned her medical degree and could finally marry her young man. Mom left a big city, her parents, and a family of 10 siblings to move to a much smaller, more provincial town. But there, she fell into the warm embrace of another big family, albeit one that was much older than hers. Dad was the youngest in a family of 9, and some of his oldest siblings were already married with grown-up children, who themselves had children. He was also the only one to go to university to do a lengthy medical degree, a course much delayed by the war. My parents thus not only married late, as compared to most of their contemporaries, they also started their family in their early 30s. I grew up with cousins, some of them old enough to pass off as my parents, and nieces and nephews who were of my age or older than me. Still, Dad and his wife and family were enveloped in a lot of love. Especially as the youngest, he was very close to his mother and his 3 older sisters. Photographs of my first birthday show a chubby-cheeked baby sitting on my mom's lap in front of a table laden with cake. Next to us was a young, long-chinned Dad, his hair slicked back as always, smiling with what I hope was pride. Surrounding us were various aunts, cousins, and friends, so close that we considered them family as well. My childhood was filled with these family occasions. Kenduris at my grandparents', party picnics in our big garden, with Tom and Jerry cartoon films that Dad would screen in our garage. We had so many relatives in Alor Satar that until I went to school, there was almost no need to invite anyone else to our parties. Mom would organize these birthdays with food, cake, and games for each one of my brothers and I, until after 4 children, she decided it was easier to just have one big party a year, even though our actual birth dates were spread out over several months. We protested, or at least Mirzan and I, the 2 elder ones, did. But in the face of maternal power, had to give in. It did mean a big bang of an annual party, with 1 birthday cake for me, and another that the boys had to share. I was particularly proud of my cake one year that featured a doll with a wide skirt made entirely of icing. As for games, my parents were always looking for something new besides the traditional egg and spoon race. Dad once returned from America around 1966 with a new toy, 2 tubes made of green and red hard plastic containing little marbles on one end. The idea was to shake the tubes and make the marbles descend to the other end, through a series of holes just big enough to allow one more.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?